Hello, innovators. I'm Todd Wyant, and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast, sponsored by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and construction innovation adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Jeffrey Nesbitt, the National Director of Consulting Services Construction for CLA. Jeffrey's strong construction industry market knowledge and connections have helped clients with installing best practices for connecting the back office to the field, and advisement on the latest technology tools to help you manage, grow, and increase your company's value. Welcome to the show, Jeffrey.
Thanks for having me, Todd. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So what brought you into the construction industry?
Well, it started years ago. I started off working actually for a masonry contractor, mostly around decorative stone and different things of facades and things like that, working as an estimator and project manager out here in Phoenix, Arizona, and quickly decided, boy, I really love this industry, but I don't know if I want to be in the heat actually doing this hard work. So from there, I discovered way back in the day, Timberline software, right? Construction accounting software. And I really just found a passion around technology. You know, I was always an early adopter with technology. So my career really over the last 17 years have taken off around software, construction specific technology before landing here at CLA.
Yeah, nice. Well, we're fans of technology around here. How do you think you can use technology then to create kind of better processes in construction?
Well, I think the technology is not always necessarily creating better processes, but it's enforcing those, right? We're using technology to help leverage what we consider best practices. So for so long in the construction industry, you guys, you know as well, that, you know, we haven't been quick adapters, right? It was the hammer, the fax machine, and now boom, all of a sudden, you know, we're taking off here. So yeah, it's really about those internal processes and having technology leverage it and put controls in place to make sure people are using it.
So how do you go about nailing down a really good, solid process in order to implement that tech?
Yeah, so it's not really rocket science. It's understanding, you know, you have to have really good understanding of the construction industry. And when I say that, look at all the different verticals, right? You know, you've got the MEP, you've got heavy highway, you've got general contractors, and everyone looks at it through a different lens. So really understanding the general construction industry, but the diverse needs of each individual vertical. And what are the best practices? What are the leaders in the industry doing? Taking those, so we get those through, you know, just a series of interviewing and spending time with people, because, you know, one of the things I've learned over the years is the way we estimate a job is not the way we account for the job in accounting, nor is it the way we manage and build the job in the field. But yet everybody in this company touches the job at some point in time, right? And that's really where you start to discover, if you look at things almost from a data flow perspective or natural life cycle of winning a job, building it, and accounting for it, that's where you start to find those holes and, you know, those disparate spreadsheets and manual processes and, you know, black binders that, you know, sit in a fancy library for project managers back in the day. So that's how you do it. It's just, you know, rolling up your sleeve and finding out what is it everyone does on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. How do you go about building that consistency then throughout the internal operations to kind of break down those silos so people are able to see where the gaps are?
You know, you're exactly right. It's silos, it's data silos. And in our industry, we're really, really busy folks. And there's what I call real work to get done. And that's why we've been laggards or behind the eight ball, because we're winning these projects and we're so consumed with building them that we're allowing our individuals or departments to go out and solve their own problems. And so if I look at an estimating department or a project management group, if there's 10 in each one, well, they're probably, you know, using 10 different spreadsheets. There's no consistency, and they're all doing things their own way. And probably more concerning is sometimes they're bringing their habits from their previous employer, right? And so is that a best practice if, you know, you were working at a general contractor as a PM and now you're at a self-performing concrete or an electrical contractor? Probably not. So it's it's understanding what is it that they need and showing the value to them. There has to be a benefit for employees or people to make a move or to do a change, because change hurts. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't focus so much time on what is it I need from them as it is, what is it that they need? What is it they need to do their jobs better? And then share that with the upper management and put processes in place that gives them the power and the tools and information that they need to be successful.
Mm-hmm. So is it more about like bringing one person to kind of own finding those gaps and those shortcomings, or is it more creating a culture that kind of is breaking down those silos and, kind of everybody's looking for it and democratize that?
Yeah, I think it's both, Todd. You have to have someone say this is a problem that we need to fix, and so that's probably some type of committee or group, a leader in project management, a leader in accounting. But it is a cultural shift. That's probably the biggest change, which is shifting the mindset from accounting or back office's information management tools as opposed to organizationally our tool as a company. And that really starts with leadership and driving it down to say, this is the way we look at our organization, and this is the way we're going to manage our business, and helping and encouraging that. And it's sharing that information with them. I think knowledge is power. The organizations that are learning and changing and constantly adapting, those are the ones that we're seeing most successful today within our firm.
Mm-hmm. I think bringing it to the applicable in the real world aspect of it is important too. So I hear in my mind some of the field guides going, why do I care what the accounting software is? Or I don't need to know that. Or if they have a shortcoming in their process, that's their problem. But if you can make it real to the field of like, this is how it's impacting you out in the field on the job site, we have to figure out this communication flow because it's making you inefficient, and being able to tell that story with specifics. I think that's how we start getting those other departments and groups kind of bought into it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. The name of your podcast, Bridging the Gap, is really reflective, isn't it, of our construction industry. It's bridging the gap between the field and the back office.
Sure.
And exactly like you said, if I'm talking to the guys in the field, the story I hear is, listen, those accounting people, they're historians. Like, they're telling me old news. And if we talk to the accounting department, they'll jokingly say, those Nathandrels, they can't get us the information that we need when we need it. The truth is they're all working together in unison and asking the same thing. So when you ask a person in the field to say, hey, I need you to do timekeeping, but more importantly, I need you to tell me, what cost code you were working on when you did your activity, and what was your productivity factor for that? Because that's the way we estimated and maybe won our job. And by doing that, here's what you're going to get back, right? You'll have a better understanding of what's expected of you and your team, where you're at any given point in time, because people are competitive people. They want to win, right? Mm-hmm. And so giving them that information, that power, and then, if you have the capabilities of putting a bonus plan in place around hitting those deliverables, all the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of the gamification of things. Yeah. As a highly hyper competitive person, I'm fully on board with that.
Exactly. We all are, and I think it's our nature, whether we admit it or not.
Oh, I readily admit it. But so what are some kind of low-hanging fruit, if you will, on how to bridge that information gap between the field and the office? Because it's a big gap. Let's be real.
It's a large bridge we're building, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Lots of support underneath that bridge.
Yeah, exactly. How do we start that process? Companies are looking at their labor shortage, right? And so that's really driving that bridge or looking to close that gap, mm-hmm. is because we can't find qualified people anymore in our space. And so the question that I always get asked by ownership is how do I turn 1 p.m. into 2 p.m.s? Mm-hmm. How do I take my C crew and turn them into a B crew, my B crew turn them into an A crew? Mm-hmm. And that's really around the processes. It's people, it's processes, and it's tools. And I think you have to have the right people and processes before you can even figure out what are the right tools that you need to leverage and help build that bridge, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah, I would say the low-hanging fruit, quite honestly, surprisingly, is probably the simplest problem to solve, which is timekeeping.
Okay.
I can tell you, I can't tell you, I should say, how many people are still using paper time cards. It's really mind-blowing with all these mobile apps out there and things that can collect time on a daily basis. That's probably the quickest one, especially for large self-performing electrical, in your space MEP type contractors where, I've done an informal study. It takes about 20 minutes to process each individual time card. That's just on the payroll side and the approval side internally. That doesn't include the guys actually filling it out, driving it back in their truck, some's getting stuck under the seat, some's blown out the window, all that fun stuff. But if you look at that, they're wasting thousands of dollars a week, large self-performing contractors, just on a simple process.
Interesting. What do you think the hang up is? If it's kind of an easy fix there, potentially, why the reluctance?
I just think it's a couple things. One is people are so busy that they don't take the time out to solve the problem.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's because there's a lack of information. There's a cost to not fixing problems.
Oh, sure.
Just like there's a cost to fixing it, right? Sure, I have to buy new software, get people trained. And that's really what people focus on, is that outlaying cost, but they don't realize what is that internal cost that they're already incurring by not fixing this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think if you can sit down and share with them and show them sort of the dollars they're stepping over to pick up pennies, if you will, it's always eye-opening that, this stuff pays for itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always think it's interesting too when people are, they'll say, "Oh, I'll tackle that when I have the time," and things slow down a little bit. Well, it's never going to slow down. They just keep staying busy, so that gap just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they keep getting further and further behind. And I got news for these guys. Your competition is doing it, and so you're falling further and further behind them. So if you want a motivation, there's your motivation. Let's go back to the competitiveness.
Yes.
They're doing it. You got to keep up.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's not only, it's not about the competitiveness as well as it's just survival at this point.
Yeah.
If you're not adapting to technology and having that mirror your processes, there's a good chance you're not going to be around for a very long time. Because let's face it, these margins are tight, and they're getting tighter with the labor costs rising, with material costs rising. And so if you're not picking up efficiencies with using technology, you're probably not going to be around for very long. And that's a scary thing. And I think more and more contractors are really seeing it this year, right? With the impact of the COVID-19, where it used to be, hey, we'll drive those time cards in and we'll drop them off at the office. Well, a lot of times those people aren't even there in the office anymore to drop them off at, right? So now what? Now what are we doing there? They're now making photocopies of it and, attaching it to emails and sending, that's very efficient.
So you bring up COVID, the big elephant in the room of this year. From your vantage point, what do you see as the kind of the main impact that COVID has had on the industry?
It's a good question. The main impact has been it's expedited the need to adapt technology. And it's sort of put a spotlight on holes in their organizations because of remote needs, because people aren't in the office, and because of the timeliness when you don't have tools to support you, that they're falling behind, right? I've seen billings and cash flow become issue for a lot of the contractors out there today because they don't have tools to help support them. And so their manual process of coming into an office, filing through file cabinets to get their billings done and get supporting documentation, the PMs need, that's really putting a crunch around a lot of organizations in their cash flow and their projections of what they need for the remainder of the year.
So how do they start to try to overcome some of that challenge?
Well, in my world, I look at things sort of as the triangle of truth, and that's your scope, actuals, and schedule. And having those things tied together is how we can overcome things. And that was to my earlier point of thinking of things as our construction platform. I've really leaned in the last month and a half away from talking about ERP or individual project management tools or estimating tools. And I start talking things about a construction platform, because that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different companies. But when you talk about our construction platform within our organization, that naturally is bringing buy-in, because we're all involved in it, right? When you say ERP, you're really thinking accounting, aren't you? And maybe that's not so appealing to our PMs and field people, but the truth is, PMs are doing accounting activities,
Sure.
right? They're approving AP invoices. They're doing progress billings. There's in accounting tools, whether they know it or not sometimes. So it's really about tying those things together, where we can, understand what's the scope of what we said it was going to cost and do, what's our schedule to get it done, and are we actually doing what we said we were going to do in the time frame we said we were going to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So coming at the technology from a little bit different angle with data, they say the line data is king, but construction's really only using about like 12% of data to make decisions. So why is the industry using just a little fraction of this great information that they have?
Well, according to Forrester Research, that fraction is 12% of the available information or data the executives have when they're making a business decision on their organization. And so if we look at like COVID, right? Like, can you imagine going to the doctor and they say, hey, you got COVID. And you're like, great, just give me 12% of the diagnosis or what I need to do to get better, right? Like, where in life is this acceptable? And so it shouldn't be acceptable for our contractors. And so, sometimes they're like, Jeffrey, you're nuts. I'm like, you guys are a data organization. They're like, what are you talking about? I said, everything you do drives data. Everything you're capturing is data that you can measure. And so one of the things that we like to show them is how can they harvest that data? And there's different tools out there. We've created some. There's lots of off-the-shelf stuff. But it's understanding, taking that data, and I mentioned it earlier, and how do I apply it in a construction company? And I tell them, well, you should become a learning organization. And they say, Jeffrey, first you want me to be a data company. Now you want me to be a learning organization. I lay pavement for a living, I'm like, yes, I understand that. But it really, data takes things from an emotional standpoint to a factual conversation. A lot of times when we're working with folks, they'll say, this is what's happening. And it's a very emotional reaction. And so what can we do with data? It supports factual conversations, which lead to more realistic decision-making, which leads to profitability and growth. So I like to take a lot of that data and say, what do we do with it? How do we learn from it? And I challenge our clients a lot of times to create, I call them centers of excellence. And they're basically learning centers, right? So when we have the data, we understand what are the best PMs doing? What are the best crew people doing? Because we can back that up factually. And then if we say, how do we apply that to the rest of that department or that group? That's a learning organization, right? Those ones that are adopting. That's why I said we got our A players. We all know who they are, but how do we take our B players and make them A players, or our C players and make them B players? Like, think about the elevation just from simple data analytics. And it's not requiring you to do anything additional. It's just really harvesting the things you've done.
And have a little self-awareness there and self-reflection, really, to take the time to look back at the data and go, okay, how can we use this? How can we learn from this to grow and do better and be more efficient next time?
Cue Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror song, right? Because that's what it is.
There you go. Maybe we'll have to play it in the background. No, we won't have copyrights for that.
Dub that in real quick.
That's right.
You got enough money to pay for that.
We'll just leave a couple of notes out, right? That it works. That's interesting. So what's a trend to watch out for that nobody's really talking about yet?
I'm going to say it's process automation.
Okay.
And when you think of automation in our space, you automatically think of robotics and or 3D printing and things like that. It's really about the process automation around those very mundane tasks and manual processes that people are doing internally, right? That's where those efficiencies are found, whether it's in accounts payable, where, you know, if you're an electrical contractor and you're getting 1,000, 2,000 invoices, whatever, a month in, right? You've got this army of AP people. How do we automate that, right? And get that information to our PMs and different people that need to approve those invoices. So it's really around those internal activities as well as external activities that can be automated to pick up some efficiencies. You know, again, another study I did with one of our large contractors, a high volume of invoices, we've discovered, you know, without process automation or looking at how we can clean that up, you know, a fair amount of the invoices they were approving, it costs more to approve. They're spending more money in AP people and PMs and the handling of that information than the actual invoice that they were paying.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, depending on the type of contract you are, it could literally be hundreds of thousands of dollars annually.
Yeah.
You could save. And just something simple like that.
Yeah, that should be a wake-up call.
For the ones that have a lot of invoices, it should be.
Well, maybe on a similar note, where do you think most construction firms are really kind of just wasting time?
Where are they wasting time? Boy, how much time do we have? Right? No, I don't want to knock them. They've got a tough job. They are building some of the most complex projects in the world with the tightest margins. And so I think where they're wasting time is, it might be on looking at, you know, purchasing a lot of technology is what I see. You know, death by 1,000 apps without taking care of that process first. I mean, I hate to be a broken record, but if you can't fix internally first, you know, and that man in the mirror look, if you will, technology's not going to solve it because you won't know what you need to solve. Right. So I think the
it might make it worse.
Yeah, in many cases it does, right? You know, because the different departments still aren't talking to each other. They have great looking tools and fancy dashboards, but it's still not communicating. So I think the waste of time is in companies trying to solve problems without looking internally first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. What kind of impact does that really have on the bottom line?
It relates back to the cost of doing nothing. So when we look at an organization and you either do nothing or you just buy technology and don't fix it internally, what happens is there's time lost. And so when we're working with accounting and project management, sort of bridging that gap, you know, we find that there's a significant amount of time wasted looking for information, data, right? A conflict comes up, it needs a resolution, or there's rework, and so that already is time wasted. And then we say, well, where's the information we need to support this choice or make this decision? You know, on average, a PM will waste over 5 hours a week just looking for data information on his own jobs, right? Because it's all over the place. And then they have to pull in accounting, or they got to pull in a director or a VP level, and they're wasting 3 to 4 hours. And so it doesn't sound like much, but when you add that up, you know, and you look at a PM salary, that could be over $40,000 a year. And then you say, okay, how many PMs do we have? Multiply that out. So again, there's money all around internally that they're not aware that they're losing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the bottom line is, you know, one is we're losing money. I say the biggest problem is visibility. Now they don't have a lack of visibility into their jobs. That's, you know, that's the big one for me is, you know, yeah, okay, I'm losing money by doing this manual activity, but more importantly, I don't know where I'm at my job at any given point in time. You know, do I really know? Do I have confidence in that number?
Right. Yeah, Makes total sense. What does innovation mean to you?
Innovation, what does innovation mean to me? It means forward looking, forward thinking. It means looking to fix a problem. Innovation is simply solving challenges.
Yeah.
Those are opportunities. And so how are we going to do that? Innovation could be many things. It could be a new great app that no one's even thought of yet, that we're not even thinking of today. Or it could be a way to do our jobs more efficiently and effectively. That's innovation.
Yeah. Nice. I like it. I always like hearing people's perspective on innovation. We have the tagline, keep innovating. So it's always interesting because there's so many different angles and ways that you can take it and innovate innovation. So it's always fun.
I like that.
So how do people get a hold of you and learn more about CLA?
Well, you can always throw my contact information up there, but you can reach out directly at me at jeffrey.nesbitt@claconnect.com. We have over 130 offices around the country, over 400 people focusing strictly working on contractors and working with contractors, and we over 9,000 contractors across our 130 offices. So if it isn't me, we have someone that can definitely help you.
Awesome. Well, Jeffrey, thanks so much for taking the time. Appreciate you coming on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Todd.
And thank you to those listening. If you're interested in learning more, you can visit our sponsor, Applied Software, at ASTI.com for more information. You can listen to this podcast anytime by simply going to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, be sure to check out our website, bridgingthegappod.com. Until next time, I'm Todd Wyant, thanking you for joining us on the Bridging the Gap podcast. Keep innovating.